The manager was stunned. A waitress from his restaurant had just answered a call in front of him. It was an important meeting, and this client was worth millions. But she was so professional that he couldn't be mad at her. That waitress would soon find out what it meant to work for the company. Because the next day, the billionaire CEO called her into his office and handed her a card. On it was written Assistant Manager. The boss felt very uncomfortable. This was Roger, the owner of a multi-million-dollar company. He felt uncomfortable because in front of him was sitting one of his best employees, Isabella. She wasn't the best-looking employee, or the most experienced one, but by far the most humble one. And right now he needed to fire her. Roger had always thought of himself as a good boss. Yes, he was tough, and he pushed his employees hard, but he did it because he wanted the best for them. However, there was one thing he could not forgive. In the service industry, there was one golden rule. The customer is always right. You may think that this is something every boss says, but isn't really true. After all, sometimes customers can be completely wrong, even stupid, but they are always the customer. And if you make them feel stupid, they will take their business somewhere else. And that's why in the service industry, you have to deal with every customer like a king, no matter how stupid they are. But Isabella had broken that golden rule. At the time, Roger had been having lunch with his friends in the restaurant, when suddenly Isabella came up to their table. "Can I help you?" she asked, which was already kind of rude. They were in the middle of their conversation, but she had interrupted them anyway, so Roger just told her that they were fine, but she didn't leave. Instead, she started asking them questions about their food, if everything was okay, if they wanted anything else, and so on. But they told her over and over again that everything was fine. Still, she didn't leave. And then Roger had finally snapped and said, "Look, we're fine. Please leave us alone." But she still hadn't left. Instead, she had responded in a language that none of them understood, loudly enough for everyone in the restaurant to hear. Of course, they were shocked. None of them had ever heard her speak before, let alone in another language. And then she had done that in front of a potential investor. Now, who was this mysterious woman? How come she worked at a fancy restaurant? And why did the billionaire CEO promote her instead of firing her? Well, that's exactly what we'll find out in today's inspiring story. Isabella always struggled through life. She had grown up poor and never really had a chance at a better life. However, she had one thing that helped her get through difficult situations, and that was her mother. Her mother had taught her to treat everyone with respect, no matter who they were, because everyone was a human being. That's why Isabella had always been extremely humble and polite. But unfortunately, her politeness often turned into awkwardness. That's why when she was a child, other kids used to laugh at her. They called her Mother Teresa, because she always tried to help everyone. Even in school, she wasn't very popular. However, Isabella was a very smart girl. She studied hard and graduated high school with honors. After graduating, she had actually gotten into a prestigious university, but she couldn't afford the tuition fees. But her mother had told her, "If you want something, then go for it. I'm sure you can do it." And so Isabella took out loans and started working several part-time jobs to pay for her education. She had majored in international business and had actually managed to graduate without taking out any more loans than necessary. However, because she had spent all her time studying and working, she had no relevant work experience. That's why when she started applying for jobs, she got rejected left and right. For weeks, she didn't have any luck. But she kept trying until one day, she saw an ad for a waitress at a fancy restaurant. Even though she had no experience, she decided to apply. Much to her surprise, she actually got hired. When she first started working there, she knew nothing about serving dishes. She often made mistakes, and customers complained about her all the time. But despite all that, she never gave up. She learned quickly and eventually became one of the best waitresses in the restaurant. Her colleagues loved her because she was always willing to help them out. And the customers loved her because even though she was young and inexperienced, she was super polite, always smiling and trying her best to make them happy. All the other employees liked her, except for one. That was Michael. Michael had been working at the restaurant for years, but he was still only a lowly waiter. He had zero leadership qualities and also wasn't particularly polite. Customers often complained about him, which is why he hated Isabella. Whenever she got praised by customers, he would grumble under his breath, and he hated it even more that she was getting paid the same amount as him, even though he had worked there much longer. It didn't take long before he started spreading rumors about her and saying things like, she only gets praised by customers because she's young and pretty. Then one day, Isabella had reached the breaking point. One of their customers had been rude to her. When she went to ask another waiter if they could get them something else, that waiter, who happened to be Michael, had replied sarcastically, "What do you mean? Are you talking to me? Do I look like your servant?" She was deeply hurt, but then she remembered what her mother had taught her. So she replied, "I don't know what language that is, but please don't talk to me like that. Might not understand it, but my mother taught me to be respectful to others." Then she walked away. From that day on, Isabella and Michael had become sworn enemies. Michael tried everything he could to sabotage her. He told customers bad things about her, tried to get her fired, and even tried to make the chef make her redo dishes. But despite all of that, Isabella continued to work hard and never gave up. And after 2 years, her hard work paid off. The manager had seen how well she treated the customers and how hard she worked, and he decided to promote her to shift leader. The other employees were envious, especially Michael, who had been working there for 5 years and still was just a waiter. But the manager didn't care about that. He promoted her because she deserved it. However, Michael refused to accept her promotion. When he handed her the new badge, he snarled, "Good luck with that." But she just smiled and said, "Thanks, Michael. I think I'm going to need it." And that brings us back to the present, where Isabella was sitting in front of the boss. She had no idea what he wanted with her, but she knew it wasn't good. "Why did you answer that call in German?" he asked, and she was confused. "I didn't know you spoke German, so I assumed that you didn't want to talk to me," she replied. He stared at her for a moment, then stood up. "I'm sorry, I just had a very important call. I can't wait until tomorrow morning," he said, and she nodded. "Of course, sir," she replied. He was about to leave when suddenly he stopped. "Actually, I'd like you to come with me," he said, and she was confused. "But sir, I have to work tonight," she replied. He shook his head. "No, you don't." "I just fired your shift leader." "We have to talk," he said, and she knew he wasn't talking about her shift tomorrow. So she just nodded and followed him out of the restaurant. She had no idea what he wanted to talk about, but as they drove in his expensive car, she started to guess. Maybe he wanted her to spy on Michael and see what he was doing. Or maybe he wanted her to investigate one of the other employees. There were many possibilities. And when they arrived at his house, she started to get nervous. What if he wanted her to seduce one of his business partners? She had no idea what to expect. When they entered his home office, he sat down and motioned for her to sit down as well. "Do you speak German?" he asked. "Yes, sir," she replied cautiously. "Then you should know that the person I just fired speaks German as well, right?" he asked. She nodded. "Yes, sir," she replied. "Well, that's why I called you here. I just fired Michael, and tomorrow you'll officially be his replacement. I know you don't have experience as a shift leader, but I believe you're capable of learning quickly. Besides, you have one advantage that the others don't. You speak German," he said. She was in shock. Was he serious? She had no idea how to lead a team or manage a restaurant. He saw that she wasn't replying, so he continued, "I know this is a lot of responsibility, but I believe you can do it. Besides, I watched how you handled that call earlier. You have the guts it takes to handle this position." He was right. She had indeed been scared, but when push came to shove, she had done it. "So what do you say? Do you accept the position?" he asked. She knew it would be incredibly hard, but she couldn't let him down. And so she replied, "Yes, Mr. Roger, I accept." He smiled and extended his hand. "Great, then let's start your training." As she shook his hand, she realized that he had seen how hard she worked and how honest she was. And that's why he had given her this huge responsibility. She knew she wouldn't let him down. Later that day, she went to the staff room, where all the waiters were eating together. "Guys, I have some news," she said, and they looked at her. "What news?" one of them asked. "I'm no longer a waitress here," she replied. They were stunned. "What do you mean, why?" one of them asked. She smiled. "'Cause I'm now the new shift leader," she replied. The other employees were surprised and happy for her. Only Michael looked furious. She ignored him and started talking about the changes she wanted to make. As she talked, she noticed that the employees looked at her with respect. She could tell they trusted her, and that's why she knew she wouldn't disappoint them. From that day on, Isabella worked hard to live up to her boss's expectations. She trained the employees, made sure the customers were happy, and solved problems whenever they arose. And because she spoke German, she was able to double the restaurant's profits in just a few months. She truly proved herself worthy of the position, and her boss couldn't have been happier. What can we learn from Isabella's story? Humility and honesty are always rewarded in the end. Never forget that. Now check out